Welcome to the Talent Grow Show, where you can get actionable, results-oriented insight and advice on how to take your leadership, communication, and people skills to the next level and become the kind of leader people want to follow. And now, your host and leadership development strategist, Haleli Azulai.
Hey there, welcome back to the Talent Grow Show. This is Haleli Azulai, your leadership development strategist, and this is episode 9, which features my friend and colleague Shannon Polly. Shannon has background in theater and in positive psychology. So she and I talk about the way in which she marries those two in order to help develop leaders and people in organizations and improve their well-being and performance. We talk about things like strengths, like going outside your comfort zone, and like improving the way in which you build your habits. Shannon leaves you with 3 very specific, actionable takeaways that you can absolutely implement right away to create better well-being for you and better performance for your organization. So check it out, and thanks for tuning in to the Talent Grow Show. Welcome back to the Talent Grow Show. I'm Haleli Azulai, your leadership development strategist, and I am here with my friend and colleague Shannon Polly, MAPPACC. We sometimes have a competition in my field of how many letters you can have behind your name, and Shannon, I think, is winning. So let me tell you a little bit about Shannon. Shannon is a leadership development consultant, a facilitator, speaker, and coach. And she specializes in 2 main domains or areas: executive presence and positive psychology. She is the founder of a company called Shannon Polly and Associates, and she works with executives, with managers, with employees in creating high-performing managers and teams. And she helps people create well-being and performance in the workplace. Shannon has a master's degree from the University of Pennsylvania. That's her MAPP, which is a master's in applied positive psychology. She's one of the first 100 people in the world to have that degree. And her ACC stands for Associate Certified Coach, which means that she is certified by the International Coach Federation as a coach. She got her certificate in that from Georgetown University. And Shannon actually has a degree from Yale in music and dramatic arts. So that's a lot of kind of the official background on Shannon. Shannon and I have worked together many, many times on teams where we get to coach people together and facilitate workshops together. And I just admire Shannon so much. And the thing that is most recent to admire about Shannon is that she has co-edited a new book called Character Strengths Matter: How to Live a Full Life. Shannon, welcome to the Talent Grow Show.
Much, Haleli. That was a lovely introduction, and there's no competition. My husband thinks we're silly for having all these letters after our name, but thank you for the introduction.
Oh, you're welcome. And I know that you're not competing, but I'm kind of a competitive person. So I'm like, man, I got to get me some more letters. So, I gave
letters.
Yeah, right. It's the ABC. It's the alphabet soup. So I introduced you a little bit, but I'd love for you, as all my guests, to tell a little bit about your professional journey. How did you get to where you are today? Can you give a very high-level overview for people that are listening to get a sense of your professional journey?
Sure, I would be happy to. It has been an interesting journey. So I majored in theater studies at Yale, and I went to drama school in London with the intention of becoming a professional actor, which I did for 11 years. And I had a great time traveling the country and doing my 3 lines on As the World Turns, Law and Order, all those sorts of things. And I loved entertaining, I loved performing, and I liked making people happier. And then I started to get a little bored with musical theater. That's terrible to say to my friends who are still in theater, but I personally wanted to find a way to impact people on a deeper level, on a more sustainable level. So I thought, I can make people happier for 2 hours while they're watching a show, and maybe for a little bit afterwards as they're reminiscing about it. But what can I do to help people on a deeper level? And so I started to look into PhD programs in psychology because I'm fascinated with the way people think, which is why I got interested in delving into characters. And I realized that a PhD program wasn't really me. sitting across from someone who has issues is not my forte. My forte is really taking people who are already high functioning and helping them perform even better. And so I looked at the various programs, and what attracted me about the program at Penn was that it was based in science and based in research. And I'd already been teaching executive presence in business and translating the skills of the theater to business people, which was really exciting because all of these things that I'd spent years learning, I found were really translatable, and people found it interesting that they could just adjust their posture and suddenly appear more confident and feel more confident. And I wanted to add to that toolkit. So at the MEP program at Penn, part of my thesis was actually to design training to deliver in businesses to increase well-being and productivity, and it also links to profitability, as you mentioned. And it really seems like exciting to be able to increase well-being and affect people on a deeper level through both facilitated sessions, but also one-on-one coaching. So I have these two areas, and I've actually started to merge them together, and was just presenting at a conference, an International Positive Psychology Association conference, on positive presenting. So combining the positive psychology and executive presence. And it's exciting to see that the research in the social sciences is actually catching up with what we theater people knew, which is that you can try on new roles, and it actually affects the cognitive part of you, and now they're able to test it. So that's what that's a little bit of my journey.
And it's really fascinating, and I love to watch you work. I haven't, a lot of the times we're actually working in parallel, not in the same room. So I often am bummed out because I really like to watch you work. It's just really interesting to see how you do that so masterfully. You blend that background in theater with that really deep understanding of psychology and facilitation. And then you've brought in coaching into this too, right? So what is the kind of work you're doing with coaching?
Really been interesting to merge these two interests as well. So in coaching, I work with people on a one-on-one basis, obviously, but I bring a lot of somatic tools to the table. So if I'm
just explain what Skype, somatic means, just in case someone is listening.
Right.
No.
Sure. It's more of a body-based techniques. Mm-hmm. So frequently, the psychology part, I will bring in some cognitive, mental techniques of, how are you thinking about your thinking? And this person in your office who really activates you, let's think about what those thoughts are in the moment. And how can we change the thoughts? A little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy that I've used in working with the Army. And then I like to match it with some physical work as well, because I know from my training in the theater that if someone's sitting across from me and they're collapsed in their chest or their sternum, that impacts their emotional well-being, but it's also an indicator of something that's going on. So sometimes I'll have, say, a female client who wants to move up to the next level. I'll say, okay, well, let's try something physical. Why don't you sit with your feet on the floor and your lower back against the back of your chair and your shoulders back and up, and how do you feel now? And sort of check in with them on a physical basis. And it's worked really well. People, we're not disembodied heads wandering around. We do have a body attached to it. And sometimes it's nice to have another way in with a client.
You said Army, and I don't know if people know what you did with the Army. Can you tell a little bit about that?
The Army is actually the #1 consumer of positive psychology today. All 1.1 million soldiers are getting trained in positive psychology, and I had the honor of being one of the first trainers on the team. I've trained over 1,000 Army sergeants, and we were training them in how to be more psychologically resilient. So how can they think about their thinking? How can they leverage their relationships? How can they leverage their strength in leading their troops? So, we would have 150 or 200 group of sergeants come to Philly, and a big team of us, about 20 of us, would train them. And it was a train the trainer model. So we were training them to go back and train their privates. And it was the most meaningful job I've ever had. I literally had a sergeant say to me at the end of the training, he shook my hand and he said, "You're saving lives, which is more important than taking them.
Wow.
Keep doing what you're doing."
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I love that.
It was amazing. Yeah. It was really amazing moment. And, it's just, just indicative of how deep this work can go.
Yeah. And usually, I think that a lot of people in business, and one would think that maybe like the tough guys in the army would kind of be the same. They look down on things that have, happiness or positive or well-being in the name. It almost, they kind of look at it derogatorily as if it's something that's fluff, and here we are doing important things in business, and we're trying to make a profit, or we're trying to, change the world, or we're trying to save lives, blah, blah, blah. And then, here you come with your cute little let's be happy stuff. And of course, it's so much bigger and so much deeper than that.
Yeah, I think that, it's really the science and the research behind it that sways both hardened Army sergeants and business people. And also the example of the fact that it is working in the Army and increasing well-being and resilience. And it's also linking to leadership outcomes. They haven't published the data yet, but they are tracking the strengths and the well-being of sergeants and people at various levels who are taking the global assessment tool, which is the tool they use. And it is showing leadership outcomes for people they're getting promoted. So there are definite outcomes there. And, it's always the quote unquote soft skills that drive the business, right? People don't leave jobs, they leave people. They leave managers they don't like. And it comes down to relationships. And I think really good leaders have to invest in their people. Otherwise, they're not going to have any people to manage.
Totally agree. I totally agree. Well, that's one thing actually that I think has definitely drawn me to you and your work, is that we both share this passion for positive psychology and great interest in it. And of course, you have, some more training in it through the University of Pennsylvania programs, certainly. And so now that you've put together this amazing book, when I heard that you were putting out a book about strengths, which I've written a little book about it, and I am a huge geek about this kind of stuff and the importance of being aware and leveraging your strengths in your day-to-day work. And I always try to bring that to the leaders that I work with. So when I found out that you've got this book coming out, I was extremely excited. And this book is really neat because it goes into the character strengths that were originally developed by Chris Peterson and Marty Seligman, who are two of the leaders in the world of positive psychology and the VIA Strengths Survey. And then the idea that you have in your book is that it goes into every one of these strengths and not only explains what it is and how to use it maybe more successfully, but you also have this really cool kind of twist on it. So I'd love to hear you talk some more about how this book came together and what this cool twist is that you've been using, and how do you hope that people in organizations, especially leaders and aspiring leaders in organizations, can use the insights in this book to improve their leadership skills and their team's effectiveness?
That's a great question and a great explanation of the book. Thank you, Lily. The book came about when Chris Peterson, who was a pioneer of character strengths, passed away almost 2 years ago.
So sad.
Long before he should have. And we were really shocked. And the first thing we did was to start a scholarship in his name at the University of Pennsylvania. And that didn't feel like enough. It didn't feel like we had honored him or had carried on his work. And so Catherine Britton, who is the co-editor of Positive Psychology News, which is a wonderful online publication, decided, what if we put together a book about character strength using some of the articles that had been written on Positive Psychology News. And Catherine has curated over 1,300 articles on Positive Psychology News. So she is an expert on what is there. So we started to pull the articles, and since both of us have fairness as a top strength, we actually took the names off of the articles so that we could really just read them and have an independent rater read them and choose them based on their value and not based on who it was. Mm. Because obviously we know a lot of the people who contributed the articles. So we did that, and then we had a few holes where we were missing articles, and we commissioned people. And to be honest, along the way, there were a lot of times where we weren't sure if we were going to follow through on this project because it's a lot of work. It took us almost 18 months. It was really a labor of love. We're like, do we have time to do this? We both had our lives, and there were a couple of points along the way where we're like, I don't know. Yeah, we should, let's keep going with it. And the twist you talk about is an idea that I actually had back in 2009 when I had Chris Peterson as my professor. And that was to pull monologues and speeches, modern plays and speeches and poems that matched each of the character strengths. And I talked to him about the idea, and he said, oh, that's a great idea. And it was one of those ideas that was just on the back burner and has been on the back burner since 2009. And when this, project came up, I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting to pull those monologues out and see if that would work as part of these chapters? So we have 24 chapters, one for each of the 24 character strengths. And the research on character strengths that Chris did was funded by the Mayerson Foundation out of Cincinnati. And they have shown that these strengths are ubiquitous across culture and across time. So from Aristotle to, it's been tested with Maasai warriors to, Mother Teresa, we all have the same strength to varying degrees. And actually, the same strengths that are most prevalent in the United States are the most prevalent in almost all countries around the world. Wow. So kindness, fairness, honesty is most prevalent all around the world. Self-regulation, modesty are lower all around the world. So that's something that's really fascinating and why it's a great tool for leaders, because it's not just a North American tool. That's one of the criticisms of StrengthsFinder is that, competition is maybe a North American strength, but if you went to Asia, that might not be considered a strength in Asia. But back to the twist, your question. So the twist is that as an actor, that from Stanislavski, that if you act as if you are a character, you're acting as if you want to play Cyrano de Bergerac and you're wooing Roxanne, that you start to become that character. And kids learn this, right? Your kid says, Baba, Baba, and you start to complete the word for them. You say, oh, look, isn't she a genius? She said bottle. And we don't say, no, honey, it's not Baba, it's bottle. Get it right. I'm not going to give you your milk. So we do that with kids. We help them develop in this way. But when we get to be adults, we tend to say, nope, you're not allowed to try on new things. You are, such and so. And I actually made an homage to you in the book. I don't know if you know this, but I wrote a line. I said, you can't both be a businesswoman and a ballroom dancer, because you are, of course, a businesswoman and a ballroom dancer. So I had to share that.
Thank you.
Anyway, you're welcome. So the twist is that the point of the passages in the book are that you're supposed to read them out loud. If you read aloud the speech, Oprah Winfrey accepting her Emmy Award, it helps embody the strength of kindness. If you read Mother Teresa's speech accepting her Pulitzer Prize, it helps to embody humility. And there are monologues from Shakespeare and from Lorraine Hansberry and all sorts of wonderful playwrights that are meant to be read aloud. And we've lost that art of reading aloud. And there's a lot of research on reading aloud and how it helps you develop vocabulary, and it helps you embody these strengths. So that's the twist of the book. And I think people are finding it interesting.
It's definitely unusual, and I love it. And it kind of brings the theater out, that this is where you are making a contribution with your background. And this idea of acting as if, that's really interesting. I don't know if you saw the article in the Harvard Business Review back in the February 2015 edition. The cover article was "The Problem with Authenticity: When It's Okay to Fake It Till You Make It." And it's basically so interesting because the whole, there's so much that people say you have to be authentic. And the author of the article and also a book about this is kind of saying, we're not making an exception in our our definition of authenticity is so rigid that people are sort of using it as a crutch, not to learn new skills, because they're saying, well, I'm just being me. This is who I am, or this is how I am, and I sort of owning that, and I'm being authentic. Whereas actually to learn a new skill, there's a paradox where you have to be in a zone that's not comfortable and that's not natural to you, and where you don't feel really like yourself, but you're not being really, really fake. You're just trying on a new skill until it becomes yours.
Right. It is not natural for me to go to the gym and lift weights. I would much rather sit on the couch and eat potato chips. But I don't say to my trainer, that push-up, it really doesn't feel authentic to me today. I would rather not do that. It is. I get this question all the time about authenticity. And I want to go back to the word you said, which is the zone. You're moving, people often say you're out of your comfort zone. There's actually a phrase that a Russian psychologist used called his name is Vygotsky, and he called it the zone of proximal development.
Wow.
So you're growing into your ZPD, or your zone of proximal development, where you're performing a head taller than you are. So you're living into this development. You are both what you are and what you are not yet at the same time. And that's like, the example with the baba and the bottle. The baby is not yet saying bottle, but the baby is living into that. And that's the same thing when you're trying on a new tool or technique, or you're trying to learn how to be more empathetic with your employees, or you're trying to learn how to delegate. You're right. It doesn't feel natural because it's not you yet, but you're learning. And that's what growth and development is all about.
Really awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Good. So a couple more things before we wrap up. I wanted to, first of all, think about what is on the horizon for you. I know that the putting together this book was a huge undertaking. So kudos on that. That's a lot of work. And I know that now you're probably in the book marketing frenzy, which is almost like a full-time job. So good luck with that. And so maybe there isn't really time for a lot of new and exciting things other than that, because that's plenty of new and exciting. But is there something that is like a new project or research that has your attention, that has you excited about something that you're planning to do in the second half of 2015 in the near future?
I do have something really exciting, and I can't talk about it yet, which is torture for me. Yes, because the ink is not yet dry on the contract, but it's very big, and it would be bringing positive psychology to a large number of people on more of a global scale, which is exciting. So I'll have to circle back with you when that comes through.
Oh my God.
But I do have, I am excited to do more workshops on strengths and leveraging the book, working with some organizations to bring that to fruition. And have a colleague who has a strengths challenge out, so I can share that with you. It's a free survey that I can share with you to give to your listeners.
Oh, great. We can put that in the show notes for sure.
Yeah. And, in the fall, another colleague, we're partnering with her. She's bringing a positive psychology certification program to the Washington, D.C. area. So I can also share some of that information with you as well. And they're partnering with my other sister organization, Positive Business DC, to bring that to the DC area. So they're in about 6 cities all over the country and Toronto, Canada. It's called the Certificate in Applied Positive Psychology. So I can share some of that with you as well.
Fabulous. That is very exciting. And by the way, Positive Business DC, I'm pretty sure you are one of the people who launched that organization, right?
It's true, yes. Along with Donna Hemmert and Marsha Moran, we did. And you were a fantastic speaker. So I got to see you in action, even though we normally work together in separate rooms, facilitating separately.
Thank you for that opportunity as well. And I admire that you started that organization and what it does. So kudos to you and your partners on that. So
thank you so much.
I want to bring ideas to people and I want to expand their thinking, but I also want to have listeners walk away with really specific and actionable takeaways. So what's one specific action that listeners can take today or tomorrow or sometime this week that you think is going to help them ratchet up their leadership skills, especially given the domains in which you're an expert?
I don't know if I can limit it to just one. So maybe I'll throw in a couple.
Okay.
The first one is I actually learned at this at the IPA conference in Orlando is some new research on habit formation. That willpower and cognitive effort is not really the way to create change. As we know, some of the research is showing that willpower gets depleted at the end of the day. There's varying, conflicting research on that. But new research from Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina is that it's actually positive emotions that help motivate and embed habit formation. So it's the unconscious positive emotion that she calls it like an opioid, that actually the liking of an activity like running for you actually drives people to continue with that behavior. So if you're trying to make a habit change, figure out how you can, as Charlie Duhigg said in his book, The Power of Habit, how you can have a cue, the habit, and then a tiny reward. So one of my colleagues says that in order to read more books, her cue is when she wakes up in the morning. The habit is 10 minutes of reading her book, and her reward is that she can't turn on her email until she reads the book for 10 minutes. So trying to think about how to embed positive emotion is one thing I would leave your listeners with. The second thing is from Tom Rath, who has a great new book out called Are You Fully Charged? Mm-hmm. And he said that, the famous research on the 10,000 hours, what people need to become an expert in something, that if you look deeper into that research, those people who completed the 10,000 hours who were experts also got 8.5 hours of sleep a night.
Wow.
So you can't become an expert if you're only getting 6 hours of sleep. That, 4 hours of sleep deprivation is equal to drinking a 6-pack of beer.
I know some really drunk people in the workplace.
Make one. It's true. It's amazing how they function at all. And the third thing I would leave people with is that valuing happiness actually leads people to be less happy than if you value positive experience, positive interactions, and doing something for someone else. So if you don't want to focus solely on money, but because, money improves your evaluation of life, but not your emotional well-being. So try to figure out what you can do for someone else tomorrow or today that can make your life more meaningful.
And you're saying that by doing something for someone else, your life becomes more meaningful and therefore you feel happier? Is that?
Exactly. That we evaluate ourselves by observing ourselves doing things. So when I observe myself doing something nice for someone else, I then evaluate myself as, wow, I'm a good person. So here's an example. Borders had this jar where anyone could put $1 in, and if people needed a few bucks for something, parking or whatever, they could take money out. People saw themselves as more caring and compassionate, and as a result, they were more engaged and committed on the job.
I like that. That's a really good, and it's so specific and actionable. So one of my other podcast guests, Larry Joya, he was the guest in episode, was it maybe 4, I think? He started this organization called Kindness Pittsburgh, where they encourage people to do sort of random acts of kindness for others, but to track it. And then when you do something nice for someone and you give them this card, I think they eventually will be able to go and log that into a system or an app or something. And then eventually it's going to give people their kindness quotient. So they can constantly up their kindness quotient. Isn't that cool? It sounds like it's on the same wavelength, but that's much more complicated at the moment.
That's very cool.
And what you're describing it's quite easy to do. So good. I hope that people will take you up on that. And thank you for giving us 3 for the price of 1. I appreciate it. There's always value on the Talent Grow Show, right? Thank you, Shannon. So how can people learn more about you and stay in touch before we wrap up?
They can go to my website, shannonpolly.com, ShannonPolly.com. And if you sign up for my mailing list, you can get a free white paper on positive business communication, which has some more interesting research in it. On Twitter, I'm at Shannon Polly, and also at positive BIZDC.
And Shannon is, I don't know how she does it, but she is always up on the latest research. She is just like a treasure trove of amazing information. And then she's really great at translating that into application in business. This is the value that she adds. So you should definitely check her out. You should definitely get her book. And Shannon, thank you so much for sharing some of your insights with us on the Talent Grow Show. And I hope that you make today fantastic.
Well, have a great day.
Thank you. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling happier already just by listening to that. And Shannon is such an interesting person. She always brings so much great high energy and tons of value and knowledge. So I hope that you learned a lot of things and that you will go and implement some of the suggestions that Shannon made. If you're interested in taking that free strengths challenge Michelle mentioned her friend and colleague is putting on, the link to that is in the show notes. Also, the link to Shannon's website and her ways to keep in touch with her and her book, which you should definitely go buy, that certificate in positive psychology that she mentioned, as well as a way to sign up for that newsletter that she mentions, where you can get tons of free updates about positive psychology every month in your mailbox. Head on over to www.talentgrow.com/podcast/episode 9. And that's where you can get all those links. And if you like this episode, please share it with others. And of course, go over to iTunes and leave a rating or a review. I really would appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in. It makes me so excited to be able to share knowledge with you. I really would love your comments. So leave a comment on my website or hit me up on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, whatever social media platform you like to hang out, because I'd love to hear how to make this even better for you. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Halelia Zulai, your leadership development strategist. Make today great.
Thanks for listening to the Talent Grow Show, where we help you develop your talent to become the kind of leader that people want to follow. For more information, visit talentgrow.com.